Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. We've got a full slate of NBA on DraftKings for today, Wednesday, the day before Halloween. I hope you're having yourselves a great week. I hope that you're doing well in NBA. I took a day off this week. I hope that you didn't mind, but I'm back here on Wednesday with this 11-game slate. I'm going to look at some of my three favorite value plays in the night. I'm going to take a look at every one of the studs and give you the two that I'm probably going to be banking on, at least in this first look. Now, look, it is 9:30 on the West Coast at night on Tuesday. I'm going to be looking at this slate from a first look perspective, but NBA can completely change. Those of you who are returning NBA players obviously know this. NBA is a different sort of beast than daily fantasy MLB or daily fantasy NFL. Number one rule for you if you're playing daily fantasy NBA is to make sure that you are at your workstation 30 to 45 minutes before lock. This is not a set it and forget it sport. Football, honestly, you can make a lineup on Thursday or Friday as long as you're avoiding players that are missing practice, and probably have a pretty good lineup by the time Sunday kickoff rolls around, assuming that there's no inactives. And usually there's no real surprise inactives on Sunday unless you're picking off the reservation sort of players. Basketball, that can most certainly happen, and when it does, you have to be able to be nimble because the entire landscape of a slate can change. Now, an 11-game slate like this one that's coming up on Wednesday, that can most certainly happen. The less games, the less of a chance that happens. The more games, obviously, there's more opportunities for players to take a night off, for players to be given a mental health day, for players to aggravate something in shoot around or whatever. And all those reasons, those players get rested. And as that changes, so do players' minutes, so do players' usage rates. The statement that I've been saying for years is minutes equals money. Players are priced based on their average points per minute multiplied by the amount of minutes that they're expected to play. And then you get kind of their average points per game, and they're priced accordingly based on what their statistical outcome is supposed to be. But if a player is priced to play about 12 to 15 minutes and all of a sudden somebody in front of him goes out, and now he's going to play 25 to 30 minutes, that player becomes an extreme value, and those are the players that we want to play. So we have some of those that we want to target this evening, and a couple of guys that I just think are still underpriced versus, or one guy who's definitely underpriced versus his role. So if you like these NBA videos, please drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notifications bell, because between NBA and NFL, I come out with a ton of videos every single week, and I don't want you guys to miss any single one of them. So let's take a look at the slate real quick. Like I said, we have 11 games. New York and Orlando. Minnesota visits Philadelphia in, I think it's going to be a fun game between some really talented young players. Obviously, Philly really good on defense, but can they overcome Karl Anthony Towns? We'll find out. Chicago against Cleveland. Detroit versus Toronto. Indy visits Brooklyn in a pace-up game for the Pacers there. Milwaukee faces off against Boston. Houston against Washington. And I still don't think that they've priced Westbrook where he belongs to be priced. Portland visits OKC. The Clippers face off against Utah. Charlotte visits Sacramento. And the Phoenix Suns in the nightcap visiting Golden State Warriors. And let's just start at the top, right? Let's look at all the most expensive players on this slate and see where we're sitting. So Giannis Antetokounmpo, we know what he has to do to pay off this massive price tag. It's almost at 11K. We've seen him do it twice. We've seen him miss it once against Cleveland. I'm never going to tell you not to take Giannis. He's 100% in play for tournaments every single night, but we're going to need a little bit more value. And as the day progresses on Wednesday, we may get that value before lock. And if he is, then by all means, fire up Giannis Antetokounmpo. However, this is not a spot where I usually would want to have a massive allocation to him. If I'm going to play him in tournaments, it's going to be something where I think that the field is going to be really low on him, lower than they should be. And I'll decide I'm going to probably overweight the field. If I think that they're going to be at about 15 to 20%, I might match the field. But I don't know. This is a spot where I definitely want to overweight unless there is so much value and it's just all over the place that I can afford to overweight Antetokounmpo versus the crowd. He's not in play for me for cash tonight. But somebody who still might be with a little bit of a price bump has been James Harden. Came up from 9,700 where he was on opening night. Still hasn't found his shooting stroke, but he found it a little bit more. I just love that he keeps jacking it. Got to the line 21 times, 57 DraftKings points. The dude can score But again, NBA, you have to be a little bit more price sensitive than other sports. He can go off for 80 any night, but we may have to wait for Westbrook to take a night off to really capitalize on his price, because I think his price is going to get held down rather than elevate to that place where like Antetokounmpo is. I think that Harden actually might come down to somewhere around 9.5 to 9.7 where he was on opening night. Not in this week, but as things kind of go around. I think that he is not priced properly right now where he is versus Westbrook. Joel Embiid in a matchup against Minnesota, one of my most favorite players to watch, can pretty much a lock to get you a double-double every night, but I think he's going to have to chase Cat around a ton this evening. So this is an interesting spot for Embiid if he can keep up with Karl Anthony Towns on the perimeter, because of Karl Anthony Towns' explosion on the perimeter so far this season. And what I mean by that is, look how much time he's spending at the three-point line. 11 three-point shots on night 1, 7 on the second game against Charlotte, and 11 on the 27th against Miami. They're stretching him way out, and that means you're going to pull the shot blocker and the rim protector away from the rim, and that's something that you need to do when you're attacking somebody like Philadelphia with as powerful a defender as Embiid is in the key. But he's going to have to chase Karl Anthony Towns around the perimeter, and that's going to present, I think, at least a little bit of a problem for Embiid. We'll find out. I most certainly want to watch this game, but Karl Anthony Towns is somebody who's definitely on my radar. Mention Russ Westbrook and the fact that I think that he's still underpriced. Last year and the year before, he was somebody who was sitting between roughly 10-1 and 11-5, depending on the evening, because of his propensity for getting triple doubles. And he moved to Houston. Everybody said, well, Harden's there and he's not going to get any usage. We've seen teams be able to sustain 230+% usage players. We saw it in Cleveland with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, and it feels to me like we're going to see it again here with Russ and Harden in Houston. There's just no more air for anybody else in the offense. It's why somebody like Eric Gordon has fallen off a little bit in the early season, not preseason, but the early season so far, because there's just no more usage to go around where there was before, when it was Harden and a bunch of shooters standing around the outside. Now it's Westbrook with the ball in his hands a ton. When Harden gets it, he's looking to score, not distribute as much as he was before. And Westbrook is the guy who's being the D'Antoni point guard who dribbles, drives, and kicks, as well as getting his own on just barnstorming drives through the key. And we're seeing his shooting percentage come way up in this offense, just like we've seen with so many other point guards running this NBA offense before. He's still getting a ton of assists and being freed up to really crash the glass, which is something that Harden never really does when he's at the one spot in this offense with this high pick and roll. So Westbrook's floor is absolutely tremendous and sits at only 9,600 yet again. He's come up from 89, and yes, I'm price sensitive in NBA. With every 100 that it goes up, it becomes a little bit tougher, but we're not seeing a game under 50 fantasy points so far. And this particular game has a total of 230. Houston favored by 8. I'm not really somebody who stresses worrying about blowouts unless I think it's going to affect somebody's minutes. This isn't a game that's like a 15 or a 17 total, or a 15 or 17 point spread where you have to really worry about anything. This should be somewhat close and competitive. And if it's an 8-point game, these players will play until the final minute or minute and a half, which means that Russ is going to get his mid-30s minutes. And I absolutely love him in this spot. Point guard isn't as deep as some other positions. Something to consider as we go along. We've seen Andre Drummond do absolutely fantastic so far in the early season. Obviously that first explosion in the first game, and then he's kind of been where he's been. This is a tougher matchup, a slower matchup against Toronto. I don't know if this is a spot with as much depth as there is at center to go after him. Like I said, Joel Embiid up top, Karl Anthony Towns. Then you have Drummond. We still have somebody like Kevin Love, Julius Randle, who has not had an explosion game yet, but now squares off against the Knicks, who are going to have problems defending him. Great floor with 4 double-doubles so far in 4 games, but really not a great game, as he's been extremely inefficient from the floor in 3 of the 4 that the Knicks have played. So pace-up game for him against Orlando, and just not... Vooch is not somebody who really stops people in the front court. He's not a stopper. He's not a rim protector. Aaron Gordon, not really that good a rim protector either. This could be a spot where Randall kind of goes off for New York. And as I said, there's other guys on this list as well. Sabonis going up against Brooklyn in a pace-up spot. At 7,900, I think that he's in play. I'd probably want to play him at power forward if I was going to go after him, because there are a lot of centers on this slate that I think project to do pretty well. So those PF/center guys are very important. Getting to some of the value plays, because I think we've talked a lot. I mean, okay, one more. Draymond, the front court in Golden State, with the injury that they suffered, now has opened up an extra 30 minutes in the front court. And you saw a bump in the minutes. Even though those first two games were blowouts, we saw a bump in the minutes in a close and competitive game against New Orleans. This one also projected to be close and competitive, as Phoenix has been very, very good so far this year. Early in the season, the first couple of weeks of the year, they've looked really good. So in a closer game, with those minutes and with that extra usage, with really nobody else there, the offense kind of flowing through Draymond Green with two shoot first sort of point guards in D'Lo and Steph Curry. This offense could operate very well through Draymond Green. That triple double that we saw is not something we're going to see every night, but he should be able to contribute in 5 different categories: points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals on a night in, night out basis. And at 7,500 does present a good value tonight in the the second highest total game on the slate for Wednesday night. So getting to the 3 value plays, I'm going to start with the first one. Markelle Fultz sitting at 4,100. We've seen 3 pretty good games from him on 3 pretty good minutes allocations. I like where he sits in this rotation. They need scoring punch. He brings that to them. Whether it's with the second unit or whether it's finishing the game, he's just not there yet, but he is growing in confidence. 2 games shooting over 50% from the field so far. His confidence was the one thing that was lacking. If you watch that game against Toronto, he did seem to have it back at least a little bit. He's going to be a streaky shooter. He definitely can score when he has his head about him. And at 4,100, I think that the floor is good enough here for the opportunity for a ceiling against New York. I want to plug in Markelle Fultz, but I'm going to put him at point guard for now, because I'm going to play Glenn Robinson as well. Again, I mentioned that injury in the front court to Kevin Looney on Golden State. Glenn Robinson, the third, has picked up a ton of minutes in his absence, starting usually at the 3, gets some minutes at the 4, can chip in rebounds, maybe get you a block or a steal. Good enough to get you a few points. Not somebody that I'm hanging my hat on, but at 3,600, it's just too cheap, right? Like, what do we need here for 3,600? We're looking at like 19 to 24 fantasy points for us to be comfortable in cash games paying for Glenn Robinson. And he's been in that range and above that range in 2 of the 3 games. The only one that he didn't, he's played 21 minutes. As I say, every single video, minutes equals money in NBA. So if he gets those 26 to 30 minutes, which I definitely think he's going to get in this game, because they just don't have that many other options to play in the front court, Glenn Robinson just too cheap already at 3,600. We're going to put him in, I'm going to put him at small forward. And we're going to move on to my third one. Like, people are going to say I'm cheating on this one, but I think Buddy Hield has himself a night. He has not shot very well in the last 2 games. De'Aaron Fox is doing very well. But Buddy Hield, when he turns it on, when he hits from the outside, is going to be an absolute monster. And Charlotte's the type of team that he can get back on track with at 6,200, just about the average salary. He's not a bargain basement value. I think that those are going to open up as the day goes along. And I just don't see anybody else that I really want to hang my hat on here, 19 hours before tip-off. So I'm going to go with Buddy Hield and plug him into shooting guard, where it's pretty thin. And I think that he's going to have a bounce back spot here and allow me to play the 2 studs that I really want to get after. The first one I mentioned already, Karl-Anthony Towns, has been everything for the Minnesota Timberwolves so far. We can plug him in at center. He's going to be pricey. I understand if you want to go a little bit cheaper at center, because there's a lot of guys on this list, but Karl-Anthony Towns has been an absolute beast so far, and I want to see him kind of drag Joel Embiid away from the basket and make him defend the perimeter, and see that how when you take the big man away from the rim, what it can do for the rest of that offense, how Karl-Anthony Towns can affect things with his passing as well, with 15 assists through their first 3 games. Absolutely outstanding production in all 5 categories, and 6 if you count his 3-point shooting, because on DraftKings you get that 0.5 bonus every time a player makes a 3-pointer. Double-double is pretty much a lock for him, as he averages 13 and 32 so far this season. I think that 32 is going to come back to earth just a little bit, but the rebounding is for real. And the assist contributions, the blocks, the steals, and most especially his ability that he's worked on to be able to stretch a defense has been very much on display, and I think that it continues here on Wednesday night. And my final player, I mentioned him, is still too cheap. Close and competitive enough game for me with a high total and the ball in his hands in this MDA offense. Russ Westbrook is where I want to plug him in. 5,500 remaining for my last three players. As always, plug your later playing players into the guard, forward, and utility spots as you will, because it gives you the maximum amount of flexibility in case you have a blocked player, if you want to try and reach for the top in a tournament, or if the player that you're playing in a head-to-head game or a double up has you blocked, you can pivot to somebody else. Give yourself that opportunity instead of locking in to one of the 5 spots, positional spots on the top. Give yourself the maximum flexibility to be able to late swap on DraftKings. That's going to do it. Appreciate y'all being here once again. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Please drop that notifications bell for me as well. And if you want to, go visit dailyroto.com. There's a link down below. They do great projections. They do great analysis, and they have an absolutely fantastic optimizer if you want to try and utilize that to come up with your best cash game lineup. If you want to build 3, 5, 20, or 150 lineups, they do a great job. So use that link down below in the comments section, or sorry, in the description down below. Just click show more. Until the next video, I'll catch up to you guys later. Bye.
He's a legend.